glad you're here. Hey, come on, come on. Okay. I'm really sorry about this. Don't start it.
I'm not
Don't
waiting
start
on
it.
you.
Let's see what day it was. Was it day? Which day of the RNC was it? Okay, here we go. I got it. I found it. All right.
Okay. All right. So,
Victory.
do you want to lead in before you start saying anything by welcoming everyone?
Okay.
And
All right, let's do that.
Okay.
Hello, Periscopers. We're here tonight at Booksada Square in Providence, Rhode Island. We've got a sellout crowd here. And I'm going to be reading from this book, The Big Show, which is the third book in the Security Through Absurdity series. This outlines this is exactly what I experienced when I was in Tampa for the 2012 Republican National Convention. However, I've fictionalized this. Everybody's names are changed, and I hope you enjoy it. So I'm going to read chapter 32 from The Big Show of the Security Through Absurdity series. Now remove my glasses. Okay, here we go. Chapter 30. RNC, Day 2. Hey, I watched it yesterday. The crowd was really digging Rooney. No, the crowd wasn't digging Rooney. What do you mean? I saw it on TV. Ethan had called her early that morning to check on her and let her know that the kids were fine and missing her. Jocelyn gave him the rundown of the previous day's events. She knew he could really care less, but he did seem somewhat interested in hearing about the hurricane that wasn't and the woman who had been sitting next to her. It was really nuts, Ethan. Jocelyn didn't tell Ethan the whole story about Heartbreaker because it was too hard to explain without sounding like a complete lunatic, and because during the night she had developed a nagging suspicion about Ethan and this woman. The only other time she had recalled hearing the name Heartbreaker were in a Led Zeppelin song, and in that weird text that Ethan had sent to her after she found that size 8 stiletto shoe in the yard. It was crazy, she knew, but she figured it was probably best to bury that theory, along with her other suppressed fears of being tortured with a butterfly pin or her kids getting kidnapped. So she just let him know that this woman's Stojanka, and she had bonded over some cool shoes and that she had to get off the phone. Anyway, today was the first official day of the convention since yesterday had been canceled. She wore a Day 2 outfit, a fawn-colored Calvin Klein fitted sheath dress. She had selected it because the black color block square positioned off the center of her chest. It reminded her of a black flag. After yesterday's hurricane and Rooney's video presentation, she thought it was appropriate. The delegates convened for breakfast and listened as to why Carol Hennessy, the state's female RNC member, explained why the RNC had decided to change everyone's stance on the party rules during a late-night emergency meeting. As of yesterday, Jocelyn's state supported something called the Minority Report. It was a document crafted by a gentleman from Virginia who opposed changing the party rules on such short notice. I mean, they've had 4 years to suggest this, and they're waiting till now? One of the older men who had been to something like 6 of these conventions rudely interrupted. These rules changes don't really affect us, Charlie, Carol said, adjusting her microphone to face the irritated man. We're a primary state. The rules change would most likely impact caucus states by requiring delegate allocation to be bound to the state's straw poll results. The final delegate count for a candidate would not be connected to the actual delegates that the caucus voted for. But there are more changes too, Charlie yelled. He was now standing and pointing at Carol as he passionately spoke. Everyone else seemed like they were trying to politely ignore him, like he was a crazy drunk uncle or something. Jocelyn found this exchange interesting because she knew that the states in which Pierce had done really well were the ones affected. Carol, that one change in particular could make it virtually impossible for a movement candidate to become the nominee. Charlie, you're a Rooney delegate. I don't know why you're so upset. Do you remember why you signed the Minority Report in the first place? It's because Rhode Island fully supports the Minority Report, and you just took it upon yourself to. Well, Charlie, I agree with your first statement. They've had ample time to vet this. I don't like how Rooney's lawyer wanted to do this on the fly. They could have proposed this 3 years ago, or they could wait until the next round of Rules Committee meetings. I signed the first minority report because of that. I just didn't think it was appropriate. So what made you change your mind in the middle of the night and sign the compromise to accept the changes? Charlie wanted to know. Well, lawyers change some of the grammar, and as most of you know, I'm an English teacher, and I appreciate attention to grammar. I think it's important, especially at this point during the convention, to be perceived as a united front against the sitting president. Everyone made a weak effort to clap between eating their poor excuse of a pancake and a greasy sausage. Charlie was still upset, though, and was mumbling in a voice loud enough for everyone to hear. Why are they changing the rules now? This is crazy. These lawyers can't just walk in and do this. This isn't how my party works. Jocelyn noticed him tossing a furtive look at the RNC woman as he continued. And she went along with it? I wonder if they paid her. Then, after everyone had gotten seconds at the buffet, some female governor from another state came in to talk about how the Republicans were really trying to focus on the women's vote. Jocelyn listened politely as she munched on her cheese Danish and sipped her decaffeinated coffee. The combo of the early morning meeting, coffee, and cheese Danish must have tripped some sort of memory center in her brain. It started a rousing round of I'm awake, I'm alive, and I feel great inside her head. The flashback to executive training for a women's seminar was most likely induced by sheer physical exhaustion. She and a bunch of RP people she had never met before, and who kept referring to her by Daily Pierce moniker, Lady Liberty, had been up pretty much the whole night stuffing photocopies under hotel room doors. Vote no on the rules change. Support the minority report. Save the party. Save the republic. Even as she was hunched over, slipping notes under the doors of the sleeping delegates' rooms, she was getting pissed. She wanted to save the country, not the party, and here she was losing sleep about party rules. This was ridiculous. Anyhow, she was tired. After they all listened to that governor talk about the importance of women, they filed out the front entrance of the hotel and waited for the bus that would take them to the convention center. Everyone was dressed to the hilt and feeling very important. Finally, 20 minutes late, a large charter bus arrived, and like good school children, everyone jockeyed for position to get into the thing. The bus was about half full, and Jocelyn was still waiting her turn when she noticed people getting off the bus they had just gotten on. Confusion swept across the waiting delegates until everyone was made aware that the charter bus they were all staring at was for some sort of oyster fest. It wasn't going anywhere near the convention center. So everyone stood around or went to the bar for the next 45 minutes and waited for the right bus. It was during this waiting period that Jocelyn found out that the delegate from the state of Virginia, the gentleman who had crafted the minority report, was waiting to get on the same bus. They were freaking out because the Rules Committee meeting was supposed to be happening soon, and no one could get a taxi. Why did they have to put us in a hotel so far away from the convention? This is insane. The people still standing outside waiting for the bus mumbled in agreement, and Jocelyn fought back a tired giggle. A white delegate eyed her disapprovingly. So Jocelyn started talking to the doorman to kill time. Finally, a charter bus pulled up. Everyone, looking a little worse for the wear, attempted the second take of muscling their way onto the bus. As soon as the bus was full, folks started getting off. Apparently, this bus was for delegates only. Alternate delegates and spouses and even the press had to go on a different bus. Well, where the hell is that bus? Right down the street. Rest assured, the alternate delegate spouse bus was not right down the street. Even if it had been, we'd probably need another bus too, because they would be over the seating capacity limit with the inclusion of the Virginia delegation spouses. So tell me again about what a great job Rooney did organizing those Olympics. This sucks. The folks left on the sidewalks were getting really annoyed as the delegate bus, which had made room for an armed female parole officer, for protection, pulled out into the main road. Finally, everyone was breathing a sigh of relief, but that relief would be quickly replaced by full-on sweaty palm panic. The traffic was abysmal getting into Tampa. Stop, go, stop, go. People were becoming obsessed with looking at their watches and counting down how many minutes they had left to get themselves to the Rules Committee meeting. If those new rules passed, the general rules of the party could be changed on a whim by the Republican National Committee at any time. If those new rules passed, Ray Pierce would not be able to be nominated from the floor. This was an incredible move on the part of Rooney's lawyer, who incidentally would be officially working for the White House within a year. Finally, after the driver, apparently not familiar with the area, snaked into and out of the city multiple times, and the parole officer jumped out to move one of the Jersey barriers, They reached the green zone, the blocked-off secure part of town surrounding the convention center. However, by moving the Jersey barrier and following the formerly blocked-off road, the bus found itself driving at a snail's pace as part of some sort of small protest. Riot-geared police lined the streets in shoulder-to-shoulder formation. Cavalry police were assembled at the street corners. And the latest and greatest in urban warfare, a black street tank sat proudly for its photo op in front of the courthouse. All the clock-watching delegates on the bus sat in frustration as the food not bombed sign slowly led the way. That's fucking it. I can see the fucking convention center it's right fucking there. That's when Jocelyn started losing it. She just couldn't stop laughing. It was the worst time to start laughing because the guy who was swearing his head off was from her state, and he was a pretty important person. He had a bunch of important-looking pins and honors starting to fall off his lapel as he shook his fist and continued on his tirade. What are you, a goddamn fucking moron? He screamed at the bus driver. Let me off this bus right the fuck now. Her state's Republican National Committee chairman had officially lost it. He was banging on the windows of the door, demanding that he be let off. His wife, whom he had basically smuggled onto the bus with him because she was not really a delegate, simply a spouse, was horrified. She turned her back on her husband to focus her attention on one of the juggling protesters festooned in a tall cat-in-the-hat hat and wearing a Don't Tase Me Bro t-shirt. The Virginia chairman attempted to intervene and told Jocelyn's chairman to calm down and treat the driver with some respect. That only threw the whole bus into a tizzy. Well, we have been driving around aimlessly for 2 hours. Yeah, you'd think they might have done some sort of practice drive-thrus or something. Or at least give the driver a map. Just let the guy off the bus. So the driver thankfully let the ranting man off the bus. The proud ranter must have assumed everyone would just follow his logic and defiantly march off the bus with him in a show of solidarity. But everyone stayed put as the bus door slammed shut behind him. Jocelyn was, of course, laughing her butt off now. As much as she wanted to, she couldn't stop. People were eyeing her as she headed down the aisle to attempt to regain her composure in the restroom at the back of the bus. That didn't work. She knew people could hear her laughing uncomfortably from behind the flimsy door, but she didn't care. It was most inappropriate, but what the heck was going on? When she emerged from the seclusion of the restroom, she noticed that a drum circle had surrounded the bus. She lost it and burst out laughing again as she headed back to her seat. The bus driver started laying on the horn. This was construed as the exact opposite of get out of the way and seemed to encourage the self-taught percussionist. Oh, look, he's doing cartwheels now, the stowaway wife said, commenting on the status of the cat-in-the-hat juggler. The female parole officer looked as if she was going to cry out too. She hopped off the bus with her hand on her pistol and, like the Incredible Hulk, moved a few more Jersey barriers. They were getting closer. This was just about the time that the author of the Minority Report and the Rules Committee members on the bus decided it was do or die time. They had the convention center in sight. They asked the bus driver to open the door, and they jumped and ran. The running slowed to a jog, and the jog to a walk. Of course, when they finally reached the building, they all had to go through the metal detectors and the credential checkpoints. They made the meeting. Yes! But they missed the vote. Damn. Now it would be up to the party members inside the convention hall to ratify the rules changes. So, that was chapter 30. And I'm going to leave it at that. So, thank you, Periscopers. Thank you. All set? Thank you. All right, so that was what really happened. The first day of the convention, of course, was called off by a hurricane. Read the book, because they're real. You guys, thank you. So there are people here that actually experienced this too.
I was flying out that day. I was down there with Doug for the when he went down. But we only went for the Paul Fest. We didn't go for the RNC. We just went down for the parties beforehand.
Yeah. So you guys, it was rainy.
Yeah, I flew out of there the day the hurricane was coming in. Like,
thank you.
I
so this hurricane was so not. You guys went to.
Drove through
We
it.
drove.
You drove through it.
Just
Some wind.
misty rain. and
Rain, yeah,
wind,
it was just
yeah.
And rain.
But I liked how at the convention, on the floor, they had a moment of silence for all the people that died in the hurricane.
It didn't die in Florida, that's for sure.
I was thinking thinking to myself, what's going on? I was like, are we talking about Cuba or Haiti or something? What are we talking about? But of course, while you're in it, you're like, oh, geez. But I remember the people at the front desk. We were all, because they have the TV on the front desk. They're like, why are they talking about a hurricane? This is Florida. This isn't a hurricane.
Yeah, we expected the flights to be canceled when we were at the airport, and nothing was canceled. I don't even think
All the surfers were out for the big waves.
Yeah, but it wasn't. It wasn't a hurricane.
Yeah, the surfers were.
So you have to read this book to about. When I was in it, I was like looking at the TV. I didn't really put two and two together, and I did come up with a theory about it. And then when I wrote this book, I put this in it. And the first publisher was like, you better fact check everything if you're going to put a real name in this. Because I did. I put some real. When you come across a real corporation or a real thing, believe me, it's been fact checked in any of these things. So I got home, I was like, oh, and it started all fitting together, and then it turned into this, what you're going to read in this book. So I don't know where we should go with this. Do you want to talk about other stuff, or do you want to talk about that one instance, or there's another thing in this book that's pretty important too, is that because there's this thread of like this mystery going through these, one of the characters gets to meet with this Swiss banker guy, and he kind of starts talking about what the American dollar, the US dollar, is based on. And that's a big chapter. It's chapter 3. Should I just read chapter 3?
Rachel,
Yes.
did you look up when that protest was actually planned? Did they actually have a set time when that was happening?
No,
or
that
was that impromptu?
No, that protest was, remember they started, like, they were announcing big time, like, there's going to be protests at this RNC.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
Remember that? And these people all had to fill out, like, a permit to protest. So they blocked them off away from the RNC, and they had, like, movable fencing, like, around the area. And they also had these, the Jersey barriers all over the place. So even if you just wanted to walk to the RNC, you couldn't. It was a big. I don't know why they did this to the city.
I remember seeing the black helicopters flying all
Oh
over
yeah,
the
basically in that, because I had worked there, I knew that this was going to be like a showcase place for every contractor to show off the newest riot gear or the newest little armed tank things that they had or whatever.
It was kind of spooky.
Yeah, well, it was stupid. I mean, come on. I mean, I was just sitting there going, but
I just remember looking up at the sky and thinking the helicopter was going to fly in and start.
yeah, or the helicopters are going to crash into each other. I mean, it was so overly fortified. It was overly fortified.
Well, next
for what
year
it was.
it'll just be drones everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll just be
Yeah.
drones.
Zach?
Yeah.
You know what's sad is that most Americans will never have the opportunity to see reality. They only know what they see
On TV.
on TV.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know how much of it is fake. It's not unless you go there and you experience the reality that you know the difference between what's really going on and what's being portrayed in the media.
It's jarring. It's literally jarring. So I wanted to write about it, but I didn't want to be like a poopy pants. You know, I wanted it to be something that people would want to continue on and laugh maybe and just go through and laugh as you're reading this story. But it's at the same time, I'm hitting you with truth bombs about a lot of stuff.
And the action moves really fast.
Yeah, this
in
book-
this book. It's quick. And
Yeah.
faster than the other two.
Yeah, the
Like-
first one is because I needed the people that I worked with to know that I knew what was going on there. And these books are the same, except for some people. But they, in that book specifically, their initials are the same as they are in real life. So if I'm found dead in a ditch, you go back to read this book, go to my LinkedIn profile, you see where I used to work, and start looking for maybe Jocelyn's boss and what his initials were, and you know, something like that. I'm serious.
I know. You truly are serious. And
I know.
It truly is reality. But
Yeah.
it's it's so funny to think about that. That's where we live
Yeah.
in America.
Yeah. But I had to put it out as fiction. And the interesting thing is the first book, I put it out through a publisher that was associated with, not Random House, one of the big, like a huge publisher. I want to say Random House. That publisher and Amazon were not in communication at all. At Amazon, and then I sold no books September of last year. Not one. Not even an ebook. I was like, you know what? I could write an ebook about sky blue, and I would sell an ebook for 99 cents. I know I would. What happened? They said, well, it's Amazon's fault. And Amazon said, it's your publisher's fault. And I was like, you know what, you guys suck. I'm going to just take the chapters that have to do with the 9/11, I'm going to make them free on the internet. I'll just put them up there. And they said, you can't do that. I was like, all right, well, I'll make them 99 cents. So I made it for 99 cents. You know how many I sold in 24 hours? 2,000. I was like, you guys really suck. So I took the book away from them, and I started my own publishing company, Entropy Press, which is this right here.
Cool.
And that's now I've had to learn everything about publishing and marketing and everything.
Rachel?
Yes.
Just focusing on book 3. I mean,
Yes. Focusing on.
you know, the game is rigged and real reform is very close to being impossible. Would that be a fair summary of your
Yes.
theme?
Yes. Yeah. And I don't. If I get to the end of the book, I bring up pretty much what I'm trying to flip around in my head. Like, what do you do in this situation? What can people actually do? Especially when you've got people running around spending over $1 billion on a presidential campaign. There's no way, like, oh, my son's gonna grow up and he'll maybe be president of the United States someday. And it's kind of that.
So what are you saying? The elections are rigged?
I don't know. But all I know is the system to get somebody there is beyond the normal person's, I think, way to affect.
When you were there in the RNC and on the floor and all the stuff that was going on with the Ron Paul delegates and how the counts were working and all that stuff, I mean,
Well, they wouldn't even.
it was rigged.
Well, they wouldn't even say the name Ron Paul. When it was time to count delegates, they
Right.
wouldn't even use the name Ron Paul.
Mm-hmm.
And those
They called
delegates.
it Romney Paul or something?
No, they just didn't even mention it. They had
They
the
were
big.
muting it out.
They just
They
didn't
were
even do
they were
anything.
muting it out.
Well,
And
remember
you could
they-
hear the crowd saying it,
Yeah,
but they
Ron
would cut
Paul.
the
Like they
mic.
would say 27, Ron Paul.
And then they cut the mic.
And they just cut
so
it,
you
cut the
wouldn't
mic,
hear it.
like. And what it was this giant. It was basically like a Las Vegas style backdrop that they'd done with all these huge screen TVs. You know, they like big screen TVs. Remember the Republican National Convention before that? It was Sarah Palin was there with the largest flat screen
Yeah.
TV. Because there was another hurricane and nobody could come to that one, remember? Remember that? So they figured that time it worked for that one. Let's do it again, I guess, right? So they had all these big screen TVs up and they had all the videos, this video montage going. And when they read the delegate count, they had it was like a Wheel of Fortune, like slot machine thing going, like, ooh, what's the number gonna be? What's the delegate count gonna be? Oh my God. And then they splash out what the delegate count was for Romney. And you were like, okay, so what about the other ones? And then they kind of make a big, okay, Santorum got 3. Okay. Then it's, ooh, let's go over to Texas, see how many let's see how. They do this big Vegas thing, like spinning the wheel, woo, and then go 27 for Romney, wow! It's this big thing, and then it'd be like, and they wouldn't say anything. And then the 5 states that Ron Paul had done really, really well in, and because he did get the 5 states, he could have been put on the ballot to be elected from the floor, which is the rules. This is the other thing too. I really could give a shit about any of this stuff before any of this. And now I was like, but the rules say that. stick to the damn rules, right? Doesn't matter. If they're not, the rules aren't working out for the people that need to win the game, they change them.
So wait, you're saying they had the hurricane and canceled the first day so they could hurry up and change the rules?
Yes.
the second day.
Well, they needed that because, they hurried up and changed the rules to base it on the straw poll results. For right there, if you were in any of the 5 states that Ron Paul did well in, which I think, what were they, Nevada? Iowa.
He won Iowa.
Yeah, he won Iowa. So those 5 states, if you had gone out to go to vote in your primary, or your caucus in that case, your vote didn't count at all. They just threw out, literally threw those delegates out of the building. They took them out. They just said, you're no longer here, and the Romney campaign put the delegates in that they wanted. So when they said those states about, the big spinning wheel thing, like everybody's like, okay, Iowa's gonna have like the rotten. Oh no, because we changed the rules that night in the middle of the night, and now we've been replaced with these Romney delegates, and Romney won it. So I don't know if when you start getting involved with politics, it's not just when we're gonna see these politicians. It's a year out till this election. So it takes well more than a year to even get the people involved. Like, I want to go maybe vote for this, maybe I'll campaign for this people. It's literally, that's why it's 4 years apart, because they got to get the paperwork, get the ball rolling, and.
Cicilline was right next door.
I know. I wish he came over. It'd be awesome. So yeah, this is. I don't mean to be a downer about it, but I tried to make it as palatable as possible for people to get this information. And, because people are still, you're still loving Jocelyn, right? She's still cool, and she's got her problems, and you're curious about Ethan, so you learn much more about Ethan. And some of the questions that kind of got stuck in your head about some of these things, they get pretty much resolved here. This is the giant book that I had written when I got back. There will be 2 more books coming out in this season with these characters. 2 more books.
Yeah.
But this is after this book, Jocelyn decides she can't live in the United States anymore. She decides to go to Argentina. Well, I don't know if she decides to go. She ends up in Argentina, and that will help me. If you've been reading the books, you see the kind of the style that I like. Have Jocelyn involved in things, and then I'm able to talk about other issues around her. So the Argentina thing will let me talk about what happens when the currency collapses, because Argentina had its currency collapse. They were a very wealthy country, and then so I'll be able to talk about that, but I'll also be able to talk about drug trafficking, and I will also talk about. I will actually talk about an algorithm about how things get on the news, how the corporations have to be. The basic is not. It's the stocks. The stocks have to be in line with what they're putting on the news. So give me that opportunity to talk about some of that. But right now, this series has been voted Goodreads Best New Series of 2014. It's in the Rhode Island and Connecticut public high schools. It's on a summer reading list in Rhode Island and Connecticut.
Right.
And it's being made into a movie.
Whoa.
So that's where I'm at with this.
There's hope for this.
Yeah. Anything else? People want to say anything in general? Feel free to just go ahead.
I have a question. You said you wrote this book first and then went back and wrote those. I've always been curious about your process because there are so many twists and turns and plots and subplots, and you're reading along and then you go, I find myself jumping off the sofa and running to the bookcase and getting the first book and saying, oh, I know I saw something about that in this book.
Because it's all one giant
did you see the whole thing before you sat down to write it, or did it unfold as you were writing?
some things unfolded about, like for instance, the thing about the hurricane. I mean, I had written that in, but then when I started to research it and realize, oh my gosh, my theory is actually true, and I needed to like really amp that up with, you know, so I need to do that. And then Lita Gerber, he was already written in, but he got ramped up kind of when I was on the final editing stages of because what I had to do is I had to take the giant book and chop it into 3 books. And by doing that, they had to be standalone books. So I had to pull out threads through the whole thing and go, okay, this is a thread that I could kind of stand alone here. This is a thread but Lita Gerber got pumped up at the end of while I was editing this book, when it was pulling the threads out. I put everything over here. So that's how that. But it's like, to me, the whole process is like weaving. You have these thoughts in your head and you want to pull it in, wrap it around, and then this other thing, send it through that way, pull it. It's like weaving, and that's the only thing I can think of. People are like, oh, do you think it's like painting? I'm like, not really. It's the only thing I think of weaving, because they say you're telling a yarn. I mean, that's how it happens.
It's a tapestry.
Tapestry, if you will. Magnificent tapestry. Yes, sir.
The idea of getting to children, is it going to be any different way of presenting it? Because I love the idea of children. If anything, they have to know and like. I'll spend some time with old people and go to a farm, but to bring up, I think your alley, if I'm wrong, is to learn how to discern.
Thank you. That's what this next book about her being in Argentina is about. Because in real life, what happened to me, this happened to me, when at the end of this stage of my life, that's when I got home. I had thrown out the television and I saw, well, I still had the television. I saw that people were lining up at the schools to get their kids vaccinated for, I think it was H1N1 or a swine flu or some crazy shot. And I realized that what they were doing on the news, obviously I'd done before myself for the Iraq War, and I was putting it all together, like, oh my God. And that's when I had the first inkling that the biomeds in the United States were doing the same thing as the defense contractors as far as their marketing, right? And that's when I came up with the conclusion that I had to somehow tell people or help people do what I did for this job, for this defense contractor. So I went to University of Hartford, of all places. I don't know why. I guess because I'd gone there and I got a graduate certificate and something else. But anyhow, I went there. There were teachers there. And I started writing a business plan because I wanted to write an algorithm so that people could, as easy as doing a Google search, like just look up a news story, and you would then see the process by which somebody like me had done to get that news story to be news. Because there's a few different things that have to happen before it gets on the news. One is that first, get a politician to like get their face in front of the camera, which they always love to do, right? So you get a politician, you get a university. Universities always are hard up for cash. So you go get a university and you ask them to do a study about, I don't know, maybe you've got a vaccine, or maybe you've got a drone, or maybe you've got something that you could maybe prove that is really necessary for people to live, all right? We're just making something up. And get that university, give them a grant, give them some grant money, it's tax write-off for your corporation anyway. They did that. Now you've got a nice white paper that says Harvard University says, or MIT says, and now we'll go back over to your politician. Here's this study. Use this study, this information. They're telling you right here, you need this thing. It's going to save everybody's life. So now you got the politician, you've got the universities. On top of that, though, you need to make sure that all of these corporations that all hold stock in the same companies, they're all on board with this. So now you're gonna start doing your financial reports, and you're sending out papers about your new product and all this stuff that's gonna, oh, and look, we got something on the news. And so you're basically doing like this three-dimensional marketing package to all these things. And then once everybody's in alignment, especially on the stock market side, it gets on the news. So I was trying to write an algorithm not to tell people that, oh yeah, Monsanto got this on it, because sometimes it's not as obvious as you think. Sometimes, and I've given this explanation before. Let's just pretend a defense contractor selling chicken. All right, like like chicken. They're just selling chicken. If they want to sell chicken, they're going to go over and talk to the, I don't know, the Mexican restaurant, and they're going to dress up their marketing materials with like jalapenos and fancy sombreros, and there's going to be this chicken sitting on a plate, and they're going to do the herbs, and it's going to be the colors of all the Mexican stuff. Talk to them, get them on board. Then you're going to take your chicken, and you're going to go do a photo shoot with it for an Italian restaurant. You're going to go talk to the Italian restaurant and have it with the pasta sauce and everything. Be beautiful. So now you've got, pretend these restaurants are really the news channels, right? You got CNN, you got Fox, right? Same piece of chicken, you've just kind of made it digestible for these people, right? So you got this, and you also have, perhaps, a hospital. Now, for the hospital, you're going to show them how the ease of preparation and the nutritional value and all that. That's great. So now you're going to sell it to them, too. Now, everybody's got this damn piece of chicken. They can flavor, it's all flavored in different ways, but it's the same piece of chicken, and the whole thing is they're eating your chicken. So your stock prices are going up. It doesn't matter how they're going to say, oh, have their liberal slant, or they're going to have their conservative slant. They're all eating your damn chicken and feeding it back out to the public. So I had gone to put this algorithm together. Long story short, my grant proposal that I had written to get some funding to do this got plagiarized, and it was plagiarized by MIT's New Media Lab. And so...
Well, why did that stop you, though?
Why did it stop me?
Yeah, but
Because
why-
MIT has every computer in the world. They have so much brain power.
Yeah, but competition would have did that.
I'm sitting in a log cabin with my two twins trying to, like, do it. And I was like, you know what? So what I'm doing is, in this fourth book, I'm just going to write down the actual code. And if you buy the book, oh, good. Here's the code. You might not be a computer person, but whatever. Here it is. MIT, F you. Here it is.
Aren't you glad they made it, though?
Who made it?
MIT?
No, if they did, I'd sue them.
Oh,
Because
they didn't actually make it.
no, they used the exact verbiage from my grant proposal, and I only found that out because I did my own algorithm, because I had heard it on NPR. So I was like, how did my, I was just like, how this happened? I actually called a lawyer, everything else, because before I even went to school, I had contacted a lawyer to figure it out. Now, do I have to have my teachers sign non-disclosure agreements? How does this work? But he told me, he said, does MIT have a product that they're selling? I said, no. Do you have a product you're selling? I said, no. He says, there's no lawsuit. The minute they actually place it out there and they are making money off of it, I can go after them, but they're not. The thing is, going back to this, I heard it on NPR, and I did my own algorithm backwards, found out that one of the judges for this grant proposal I was trying to get, she worked for, it's a very large newspaper, McCormick. It's actually McCormick Foundation she works for, right? McCormick Foundation is associated with the MIT labs, the MIT New Media Labs. I followed it, the little threads to the whole thing. That's how she actually got her hands on my exact proposal. And that exact proposal verbiage then got on a press release or something over to NPR. So, but that's how I use my own algorithm just to show me like, oh, this is how this works. But yeah. So yeah, the next book you'll have a little bit of code in there just so you can.
So you're giving it out for free. It's open
Yeah.
source.
So yeah, it's basically it. And so they can. Well, I can't do the whole entire thing. I mean, the whole book would, codes could go on for thousands of gazillions of pages, but I'll give you the beginning of it. Once again, just to let people know that I know that it's basically what it comes down to.
Are you gonna make a run for governor?
No!
Think you can beat Gina? Come on! We need a real candidate.
It's already predetermined, John.
No, I don't think I'll be doing that. But I do think it is important that people get to know their neighbors. I do think it's important that people are involved with their community. That I think is important. I used to have a book club. Some of you went to that book club. To me, it was because I thought it was really important that people hear from other real people, not the TV, what was going on around, what other people were thinking about. And if they were thinking about stuff, maybe you were thinking about stuff too. Maybe you weren't a freak. Because sometimes television shames people. They talk about bullying. They're on the screen in your face going, there's a lot of psychological tweaking they're doing to people to make you feel a certain way about something, so that you act a certain way.
You don't dare to speak out because
I mean,
you're gonna get shamed in public.
yeah, and there's all these things that come into being, like planned obsolescence. I remember when I was at a debate, I only went to a state college and had a debate against Brown. But the resolution was the future isn't what it used to be. And I remember going to the World's Fair in Flushing, seeing what's going to happen in the 70s and in the 80s. We have flying cars and this is GM, this is Ford, this is Lincoln. They said, and in the 70s, we were going to have the Google cars. Just turn your seats around and play bridge with the people in the back seat. And somehow, some way, as you say, we've been really manipulated to eat this lousy chicken. You change the cup holder or add a couple of lights and you think whatever we had is okay. I think, we talked about television, turning it on, or turning it off. Couldn't just an active parent sit with their kids and open junk mail and watch television commercials and then teach them discretion there? And at those moments to really say, this is what's happening to you.
Or you could just throw it out. It's
Yeah,
pretty
just throw it out.
it's pretty powerful stuff what they're doing.
We can work on a code to turn all the TVs on.
The manipulation that's going on, I've kind of mentioned in this book and this book, with that Neurofocus company. That's a creepy company. I remember getting the information about it, thinking it was just had nothing to do with me. But little did I know that defense contractor was using that company. Just so you know, Fox and CNN are both huge stars. This Neurofocus is now owned by Nielsen Ratings. And they do basically, it's not even like they're just looking at who's watching TV where. They're looking at what it's doing to your brain.
Well, that's what the media is. It's a massive psyop.
Yeah. Pretty much. So.
What would you do if the writers from Mad Men wanted you in their stable?
I don't have TV, so I don't know what this is.
I'm just thinking these are know, these are the fellas from what, the fifties and sixties that
60s.
marketing geniuses. And to have you in that mix to temper what they're doing, so it, you know,
Oh, I don't know enough about this show to really know.
It was a PR firm, and it was just all these misogynistic men who took advantage of women and manipulated the rest of the country and the world.
Okay,
So
right.
basically, that's pretty much what that.
Yeah.
Is that would that
Yeah, you got it.
describe it? Okay.
The tools today are so much more sophisticated and subtle.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Are you anti-chicken now? Are you coming out and saying that you're anti? Is that
I'm like,
the message?
dude, don't touch the chicken. Don't touch that chicken.
I did have a question about
Yeah.
Liederberger?
Yes,
Liederberger.
Yeah.
yes.
He, in real life, that's the name of the mayor of, what's the capital of Switzerland? Well, there is no capital.
Bern.
What, no,
Bern.
it's
Zurich?
no, it's not Bern.
Bern.
Nonetheless, he's one of the mayors over there, but nonetheless, go
Okay.
ahead.
Oh, was he an actual?
A person?
Did you base that off a Swiss banker, Bilderberger? I mean, obviously you based it off a Bilderberger type, I guess.
Maybe. No, I picked, he was the, Zurich. He was the mayor of Zurich that I used that name. But, that guy is completely just out of my head. But the information that he's giving about HUD, that's true. And I don't know if you've read the book yet, Bob Nadia. But there's, chapter 3 is talking about what the U.S. dollar is.
Do you talk more about the dark money thing? in
You
your
want to
next
talk
book?
about good? Okay, let's talk
Yeah,
about
that's-
chapter 3. All right, chapter 3. Should I just read it? It's fairly short. Should I?
You're not being kicked out.
No, not yet. Should I read it? Okay, chapter 3. It's short, and it's kind of a kick in the pants. It's right at the beginning, right? Okay, now, in this book right here, there's a character that's kind of just shows up. You don't know his name. He's in there, but he shows up and scoots out real quick. And then he's at the very, very end. And then in this book, he kind of just disappears entirely, and he shows up in the final book. And his name is Timothy Brucker. He's a board member over at the conglomerate. So anyhow, I'll read you chapter 3. Basel, Switzerland. Timothy Brucker adjusted his gold cufflinks while waiting for the response. Although he looked responsible in his Galidio Zenga, I didn't even know how to say the suit. It's a suit. Galino Zenga, it paled in comparison to the suit Jonas Lederberger had on. A dark charcoal gray brioni, carefully stitched together with threads of fine white gold. Tim wasn't exactly sure when he became aware of the particulars of men's luxury suits. It had happened almost organically as he adapted to his surroundings of the past 30 years. Only a decade ago, Tim would have been incredibly impressed with Ledergerber and his suit. However, both only served to irritate him now and if he didn't have some sort of nicotine in him within the next 4 minutes, he was going to lose his mind. Mr. Brucker, are you attempting to blackmail me? Lederberger asked with a hint of mild amusement as he stood with his back to Brucker, looking out the floor-to-ceiling windows toward the Art Basel building. You realize, of course, that the media stories about corruption are irrelevant. You are dealing with an untouchable matrix organization. He turned, studied Tim, and strode casually towards his enormous modern art-inspired desk. My dear man, he sighed as he made himself comfortable in his executive chair positioned in front of an 8-foot-tall original Jackson Pollock oil painting. I have no idea how you got here, but perhaps I should let you in on a little secret, no? And what would that be? Tim asked as he crossed his arms across his chest. This visit wasn't going the way he had expected. He had hoped that Ledergerber would flinch when he mentioned the conglomerate, the congressman, and the shenanigans of the tiny division in eastern Connecticut. But it was becoming disastrously apparent that Tim was out of his league as he glanced over at his cell phone on the end table next to him. A text message had just popped up and caught his eye. Gold, U.S. $1,759.14. Oil, $99.40. NYSE, Guam, $70.58. DJIA, $12,983. The little digital flash reminded Tim that Jocelyn McLaren was probably still in danger. She was a loose thread dangling from the conglomerate's tightly knit web, and somebody was going to snip it. She wouldn't be the first one to lose her life, and it wasn't her fault that she was mixed up in any of it anyway. It was just that her former manager, Robert King, was probably going to run for office or be appointed to some lofty position integral to the continued success of the conglomerate. And naturally, it was important that she be somehow silenced. Paid off is what he would have preferred, and that's how she ended up with the butterfly brooch. Unfortunately for him, and even more unfortunately for Jocelyn, no one had really explained to her what that pin was all about. He had recently even flown up to Rhode Island because of the situation and discovered that the frustrated assassin he had met with at the International House of Pancakes was taking orders from a bigger fish in the food chain and wasn't changing course. Following this chain of command, Tim was surprised that he ended up here in Basel, Switzerland. It was funny how it worked. If you backtracked the trail of people with prices on their heads, a whole world of opportunity opened for him. It wasn't so much that Tim cared if Jocelyn lived or died. It was the people that wanted her dead that interested him. The people who had